Good morning, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier, Chairman of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. Good morning, Father.
Good morning, my friend. I have a question for you. Where are we?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
Father. We are taping today at Centerpoint Community Church. Lovely, lovely facility, and we absolutely appreciate that they have allowed us to come in here and tape this show.
We have an event coming up here.
We do
Don't we?
indeed.
Yeah.
Right here, we've got the Naples Pro-Life Summit, which is, April 23rd to 25th. Can you see I've got a crib sheet over there?
I mean, I can see it. I think you got the wrong date.
April 23rd through 25th? No, Father. I'm more information, actionforlife.org. Hey, we have a... what I think is could be a fun program today.
I think so.
I wanted to talk about what we're reading,
Okay.
or have read recently, for that matter. I think many in the audience know, but some don't, that you are a vociferous reader, or is that voracious? Voracious reader.
All right, I'll take either one.
All right. I, not so much as you, but I've read some interesting books in the last couple of months that, are worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start, or would you like me to?
Well, I'll choose.
Paper, rock, scissors.
All right, go ahead.
I just finished a book last week called Overruled by Neil Gorsuch, the Supreme Court Justice. The gist of the book is that these are books, by the way, that I would highly recommend to you, but the gist of that book is there is a very concerning proliferation of laws, many of which were not written by Congress. The bureaucrats began by issuing regulations, slant laws that had civil penalties. We've now gotten to the point where some of those regulations or laws have criminal penalties.
Right.
Beyond that, erosion of individual freedoms. Gorsuch goes into detail about that in the book, and he's absolutely right. And then judicial overreach, where, as we talked about, federal agencies creating regulations without any accountability to the public, and
Unelected officials.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all part of that bureaucracy, folks. It's the deep state. And these people are, in effect, writing the laws, and then they're even having the laws enforced.
Well, and if you get into this book, again, it's called Overruled by Neil Gorsuch. It's very easy, pleasant reading. He actually talks about specific cases, not necessarily that he was involved in, although I think one or two when he was on the Court of Appeals he was involved in. There's a fisherman up near Punta Gorda that, a fish and wildlife guy gets on his boat and determines that I think it's 3 of 72 fish are too small. They should have been thrown back. By the way, he was deputized by the feds. So now this poor fisherman is facing federal prosecution. He lost his boat, he lost his house, he lost his livelihood because he refused. Of course, they charged him with 8 different things and then said, just plead to this,
Sure.
and it's a misdemeanor. And he said, I don't want a guilty plea in a federal court on my record. And he fought it all the way through. So anyway, Overruled by Neil Gorsuch. Great book.
That's part of, folks, one of the courses that we have in law school, administrative law. And it just goes to show us, that sometimes we can really bypass the constitutional process and hand over our rights to unelected bureaucrats. So let's hope that, in time to come, during the present administration, we can begin to remove some of that administrative state, because it does take away our freedom.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you another one that I've been reading, and it's something that I think all of you should read, especially in light of Doge, D-O-G-E, and it's all about Elon Musk. Now, folks, this is a big, thick book.
A biography of Musk?
Well, yeah, it's a biography up to now. We don't know the the outcome. But it's an explanation of who the man is and where he's come from and what he's done. And it's by Walter Isaacson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
famous biographer.
it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And I would highly, highly recommend it to help you to understand Elon Musk. BC, I am very impressed by this man. You might not like him. You might say, he's taking away people's jobs and he's unelected and the president can't use him to cut down the bureaucracy and whatever the case may be. However, the man is a genius.
I agree.
I mean, just the things that he's done. First of all, Tesla is fantastic. It really is fantastic. And a lot of people have invested in Tesla and have made a lot of money in Tesla.
How about Neuralink? He's
again
implanting chips in people's brains, and it's working.
I know. And you know what that is, folks? Neuralink, and you implant a chip. So suppose somebody is paraplegic, and they can't even use their hands. They can't walk, but they can think, and it could turn on the television. I mean, this is what he's working on. Now he's going to have one. This is even, I suppose, even more amazing, to return sight to the blind with a link attached to this chip in the brain. I mean, this is fantastic.
The guy's 8 steps ahead of everybody.
And then SpaceX.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the government, couldn't lift up a rocket for a number of years, and all of a sudden he comes up with SpaceX, and he's doing it. It's a private company doing it. And I've seen one of these things. BC, none of it doesn't go up. It comes back and lands in the...
That's the key.
Hey, you're not wasting all that stuff.
And guess what else is happening with him, in case you haven't read about it? He's now consulting with Boeing to get the Air Force One. There's supposed to be a new Air Force One that I think was due to be delivered a couple of years ago. And Boeing said, we can do it about 2028. And Musk said, let me go in and help you out. And he's accelerating that process. He really is just an amazing guy.
Yeah, folks, I really highly recommend the book. Not only is he so creative, such a genius, but he knows how to get the most bang out of his buck. And I hope that that's what's going to happen now in Washington.
With the government, yeah.
Yeah, because there's an awful lot of tax money going out there, but it's not doing an awful lot of good.
As an aside, Walter Isaacson also wrote Steve Jobs' biography, which is a great book.
Yeah. And he wrote a book on Da Vinci.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's another wonderful book. So I would get a hold of Musk's book, because he's like the talk of the town at the moment, okay?
Here's some light reading for you.
All right.
A book called The Answer Is by Alex Trebek.
Oh, you remember him.
When Alex was going through his cancer and knew that he was terminal, he decided it was time to write his memoir. And it's just, he's a very, very humble guy who did extraordinarily well for himself. But it's a nice book. It's a very enjoyable reading.
I had another one that I really enjoyed reading, and I suppose now it's maybe something that we already have seen what this book has produced. It's called War on Warriors by Pete Hegseth, the present Secretary of Defense. And in this book, I couldn't put the book down. He was talking about really what has happened to our military, how weakened the military has become in our country. And also he talked about how DEI was ruining the military and, causing us to have a less than adequate fighting force in the country. I am sure, folks, that President Trump must have read this book, or his staff said, hey, you got to read this book, because this guy is telling us what's been going on and what has to be done to make America's fighting force great again. We didn't even have enough people to support Army, Navy, Air Force, and Space Force. The only one that was making, their quota, Marines. And that's because they're like a
they're
unique
warriors.
Bunch. That's a unique bunch. But Hegseth, I would recommend, take a look at Hegseth's book, and you can find out, why he's doing what he's doing right now, why the president wants him to do it.
He's, he went into the Pentagon and said, we are going to have a warrior mentality, and that's what our military needs.
Yeah.
Another interesting book that I read recently called 4 Friends, Promising Lives Cut Short by a man named William D. Cohan. didn't look like it was all that interesting until I got into it. He, along with these 4 people, went to Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts. One of the people was JFK Jr., along with Will Daniel, who was Truman's grandson, Margaret Truman's son, Harry Bull, who was a very successful Chicago lawyer right out of school, and a guy named Jack Berman. As it turns out, Jack Berman was shot in he was at his law firm, and there was a disgruntled individual that went in shooting and killed Jack Berman. We know what happened to John Kennedy Jr. If you don't remember, he crashed his plane on the way to, Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, he was going to some wedding.
Harry Bull, we talked about Harry Bull. Jack Berman was the child of Holocaust survivors. Jack Berman is the one that got shot in his office. Harry Bull took his kids out for the day boating, and they all drowned. One of the kids went in, Harry went in after them, and it turned out. Then Will Daniel was hit by a taxi in Manhattan. So it's just kind of coincidental that these 4 people died early in life, all of them in their late 30s or early 40s. But the book begins at Phillips Academy and then goes on to Harvard, and you learn some things about John Kennedy Jr. that you wouldn't otherwise know. Not necessarily scandalous, but his marriage was a little rocky. And
well, I'm told that his wife, that they were kind of feuding, and she insisted that they go that night, that it was terribly overcast, and just to make her happy, he goes. And
I don't remember if that's what the book says, but they
what was her name, Besant?
Carolyn Bessette.
Bessette, yeah.
And her sister was with them.
Yeah.
So
and the plane, if you don't have visibility, you lose perspective.
Right.
And the plane went upside down, right?
And he was flying by visual rules rather than instruments.
He shouldn't have gone out that night. I mean,
No.
That's what they say. He should not have gone out. What a shame. He was a very talented young man. He had this magazine called George. He was handsome. I'm sure he would have maybe followed in his father's footsteps, but
he was certainly electable.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting book to follow these young men's lives that unfortunately in each instance were cut so short, and they were men with great promise.
Right. Yeah.
What else you got? You want to take a break first?
I don't know.
Let's
It's up
do
to
that.
you.
Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this. But for the moment, I'd like to talk to you about the expense of airing this program. Many people don't realize how expensive it is to produce this program and to get it on the air. Would you care to guess? It's about $3,000 per week. We think that's a reasonable expenditure, but obviously it's an expensive one. So we need to ask for your help. If you'll go to actionforlife.org and click on the donate button, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, you can donate once or you can donate each month, and we certainly have viewers who do both. We appreciate that. Please take time now to visit actionforlife.org and click on the donate button. Thank you so much for your support, and may God bless you always. Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. What else are you reading these days, or have you read recently, Father?
Well, I read this wonderful book. Almost through it. It's called Confronting the Presidents by Bill O'Reilly. And he goes through every one of our presidents. He gets all the way up to 46. I think the book came out before 47 got reelected. But there's a couple of, I'd say 3 or 4 pages on each of the presidents that we've had thus far. Now, what's interesting about this is it has information in there that you usually don't find in your average history book. And you're saying to yourself, wow, that's interesting. I never knew that. But what's most interesting about this, folks, is sometimes we don't have a real picture of the man that was president, because it's presented to us in maybe in an academic way, or in maybe some kind of a way that kind of glorifies the office. Or if the person is not popular, that kind of says, yeah, they were just a bunch of bad guys. He was a bad guy, and his legislation stunk, and whatever the case may be. Here, we're getting some of their background, where they came from, and some of these gentlemen, they didn't come from wealth. Some of them really were born into poverty, real poverty. How they got themselves educated, and then how they became president. Sometimes it wasn't something that was, this is preordained, there was a direct path. It was unusual the way things happened. Sometimes the least likely person gets nominated.
Harry Truman. Well, not nominated in his case, but
one after the other. And then you have certain stories in there that, you say to yourself, gee, I never knew that. Millard Fillmore, known as, not a very good president.
Yep.
He was the only president that did not give an inaugural address. They said, why? They said, why aren't you giving an inaugural address? He said, I have nothing to say.
Well, O'Reilly has great researchers.
He's wonderful.
With all of his books, the killing, Kennedy, killing Lincoln.
Killing the mafia. Killing.
Yes.
That's a great one. You read that, didn't you?
I read the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
He just has.
I knew some of those guys. I just kidding.
Well, hey, those guys are all devout Catholics, Father.
Very devout. Very devout. Yeah, every once in a while, you got to do what you got to do.
I'm reminded of the sacrilegious scene in either 2 or 3, right, where Michael's the Godfather,
right,
and all these guys are getting killed while he's baptizing the baby.
You renounce Satan. I do. Boom, 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 boom. That was some movie. Now, number 4 is coming out.
Is it?
Yeah, they're working on number 4.
Are you in it?
This is the surprise I've been telling you about, folks.
All right, back to books.
All right.
Is it really Godfather 4?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Godfather 1 was great. Godfather 2 was great. Number 3 stunketh. That's the past tense of stinks. and now number 4 is coming out. And Pacino is going to be in it again.
Wow.
Yeah, but he needs to be like the old Godfather now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I got another book for you that was fascinating to me. From the Inside Out. The author is Eric O. Roningen. It happens that Mr. Roningen was on the 71st floor of the North Tower when the American Airlines Flight 11 hit the building. And he survived. And he tells his own story as well as the story of many, many other people, firefighters, police, all the first responders. It's just from the inside out, and I had never seen a book that was written in the first person the way this is. Really very interesting. So now it's your turn.
My turn?
Because the sum total of my reading is right here.
All right. A book that I found fascinating, which I had been meaning to read for a long time, and I finally did, was All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren. And Robert Penn Warren was the poet laureate of the United States for a number of years. And I think he wrote this book, I think he wrote it in the 50s, maybe 60s, early 60s. But it had to do with a character who lived in the 1920s, and his name was Huey Long. Huey Long was the governor of Louisiana and then Senator Huey Long from Louisiana. He was basically a socialist, and he was, what do you think? He was rather...
he was a slippery guy.
Yeah, I was going to say corrupt, but he was a slippery guy. And they called him the Kingfish, Kingfisher, not from famous Amos and Andy Kingfish, but the Kingfish. And talks about his rise to power. Now, this is what we'd call it's a novel, and it basically is reflecting the life of Huey Long, but it's not history, okay? But it's close. It's close.
Fiction based on truth.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And talks about his rise to power, his personality, how he used the different offices that he had, and then it talks about his assassination. What happened with his assassination, because he eventually was assassinated. So it's a famous book. just the title alone, All the King's Men, it comes from Humpty Dumpty.
Oh, yeah.
Dumpty, all
Fell
the
off the wall, and then they had to put them
couldn't
back together
again. You know, all the king's horses, all the king's men, couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. Later on, the same concept was used by Woodward, Ken Woodward. And he talked about this in All the President's Men.
Bob Woodward.
Bob Woodward. And Ken something or other was with Bob
Woodward. And,
Ken.
what were they? Woodward, whatever.
Well, whatever. Folks, you just look it up on Google. And
people are throwing things at the TV saying, "How can you not know that?"
I know.
Bernstein, Carl Bernstein.
Carl Bernstein. But they picked up the same theme in All the President's Men. And once again, you have these people reflecting on, a fall from power. Not assassination, thank God, but a fall from power. And no matter what, the message is, couldn't put the president back together again.
Here's another one that I'm reading right now. The Rise and Fall of Stalin.
Oh, boy, huh?
And the reason I chose to seek out this book is not because I care about Stalin, because, he's an old dead commie.
You don't want to pray for his soul?
Well, I'll do that too.
All right.
Actually, he was venerated somehow, and they moved him to Class B status.
Yeah.
But the reason I wanted to read the book is because there are so many parallels between Stalin and Putin.
Mm-hmm. And he was schooled by them. I mean,
right.
Putin's an old commie. I mean, head of the KGB. I mean, that's where he learned his lessons.
So I'm reading that book now, and it's quite interesting. What reminded me of it is another highly successful politician who came from dirt.
Yeah.
And clawed his way to the top, sort of like Huey Long did.
Yeah. What's interesting, you talked about Putin and who's buried in the famous Kremlin wall. I don't think Gorbachev was there. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah. He was blamed for the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and Khrushchev is not there. He fell out of favor with the party.
You know how that happened with Khrushchev?
What happened?
You know when he was banging on the table in 1959?
Oh, yes.
If you look closely, he's wearing both shoes. So the premise was that he was pounding his shoe on the table. It wasn't his shoe.
We will bury you.
That's right.
Yeah, remember that deal. There's just a little bit off the topic here, folks, but that had to do with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And just a terrible, terrible thing. John Kennedy stood up to them, thank God. But you know what, BC? What I don't understand is why didn't Kennedy say, "You're out of here"? Get out of Cuba, period, because of the Monroe Doctrine. Some say because the deal was that they would be able to keep their presence in Cuba. They took the missiles out. We would also be able to keep our presence in Turkey. That's the story that I heard. Because really, if you're looking at Cuba today, folks, this is a terrible situation there. They don't even have electricity. All of the fields are barren. They lay fallow. No food, no electricity, and yet they remain. So President Trump, if you're listening to this show, which I know you do, get them out of there.
Well, here's a question that maybe you have some insight into. I was ruminating on this the other day. Why don't we just take it over?
I don't know.
He's talking about Greenland, right? And Canada, 51st state. We should start with Cuba. That's a nice strategic asset, and the people would be in favor of it.
Yeah, I mean, those poor people are suffering terribly. Now, we do have Guantanamo there. I mean, so we have some kind of protection, but I'm feeling sorry for the people. Now, I'll tell you something, though. The one good part of it, if I could say this is good, we have a lot of Cuban people here, and they have made fantastic citizens. They're talented, they're educated. I'm at the hospital quite often, doctors, nurses, we're blessed. So, folks, even though there's sometimes something looks bad, there is also something good involved. But Mr. President, get them out of Cuba.
Amen. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm BC Cloutier. Incidentally, if the set looks a little bit different today, it's because we are taping at Centerpoint Community Church. Lovely facility, lovely group of people. I would urge you to come and worship here if that is your
Yeah, well, you know, the pastor here is my buddy, Jim Knight. And when we have the summit here, 24th and 25th, me and Jim are going to be having a dialogue with each other regarding pro-life issues.
So Jim will be sitting right here.
Jim will be right here. And like, he's a big pro-life man. And I hope that a lot of people will be able to attend the summit.
Wrap it up with books, Father.
Wrap it up with books. Hey, folks, reading is so important. It really, really is. You want to do your kids the biggest favor in the whole world. Throw out the iPhone and get them books, but you can also get them a Kindle because books can pile up all over the house. I have a Kindle now. I love it to death. But, you know, we've been talking about like historical books and political books. Read novels because it gives you a whole different outlook on reality. And there were two books that I read recently, a couple of novels that I read recently. One is Tobacco Road, and it gives you a picture of the South in the 20s when cotton was no longer lucrative and factories came in and what happened to the people in the South. It's a very, very interesting book. The second book that I think that people should make an effort to take a look at regarding a novel is take some novels from Dickens. I just finished reading Nicholas Nickleby. And it's just a wonderful book. All of Dickens is just wonderful. So if you have some time and you really want to enjoy yourself, chill out, take a look at Dickens, take a look at some American
John Steinbeck.
novels. John Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath.
Cannery Row.
You can't beat this stuff. It gives you a nice snapshot of America, and it makes you start to think a little bit differently and see the world as as it was, or how someone else may be imagining it. At the moment, I'm reading Salman Rushdie, Midnight's Children.
The new one?
Yeah. It's old. This is an old one. It's about 50 years old. And this is before he did Satanic Verses.
Okay.
And this is about the country of India, how India was created from the British Empire, the Raj, as they say, and what happened. It's through the eyes of a man that was born on the birth of the nation of India. And then you get a nice snapshot of what's going on in the country and even the division between Hindus, Muslims, and the development of the country of Pakistan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next week, same time and same place. Until then, I'm BC Cloutier, wishing you a great week, and God bless.